Hello, everyone. This is Anas Ahmad, and you are watching Banished by Nightmares. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Banish by Nightmares. In this show, we narrate horror stories and we collect horror stories. So if you have any horror incident or supernatural or any cryptic events, you can share with us on our email or on the comments. You can, tell your stories, what happened with you. So let's get started with our stories because it's story time. Let's start with a short one. When I was three, I told my parents that my great grandmother came to me in a dream and said her feet didn't hurt anymore. I think she had problems due to diabetes or something. She had died that night. They received the call shortly after I told them. Not paranormal, but a spooky coincidence that she came into my dream on the same day and said to me that her feet didn't hurt anymore. Yeah, it's kind of a weird, spooky coincidence. Let's move on to the next one. I work in a cemetery. One evening I had stayed too late to do some catch-up work. I was taking picture of some granite samples to have on my phone and had already locked up. I was alone. As I was holding my phone, I heard the doorway to the basement swing open, slam shut, and heard footsteps go down the stairs. I froze. I thought for sure someone had come in. I called out to see if it was someone from the maintenance. No reply. I got scared because if it wasn't them, someone had broken in. I stayed still for a bit and listened, then called out again. Nothing. Finally, I collected myself and got brave enough to look. No one there. I peeked down the basement. It's empty. All the doors were still locked. Maybe someone, visiting there. It could be, but if it would be happening to me, I'm working in a cemetery. So I don't think so. I would run. I would rather run rather than investigate who is there. Other than if I am responsible for the security. So let's move on to the next one. My dad was in hospital with a serious brain tumor. The hospital was about 40 miles from me and he was in no shape to even keep awake. One night I was chatting to a friend on Amazon. Them, old days. He asked how my dad was, and I turned to my left and saw him sat in his chair, just looking at me. I replied, I think he's okay, sat in the room with me. To which my friend said, isn't he in a hospital? So I looked again and there was no one. I never mentioned it to anyone that what had happened when it happened and told my friend that I must have been seeing things. Dad survived and is still here today. Cut to about 21 years later, and I met up with my dad and just having a chat. He says, something's been on my mind for years, son, and can't shake it off. When I was in hospital, I remember being at home sitting in my chair. You were on the computer and you looked at me, and then I woke up in the hospital. And it felt too real to be a dream. That's when I told him my experience. it happens with both of you that you were in your room and your dad was there for a second on his chair, and even he remembers it. So I don't know what could have happened there. It's very strange to me. What do you guys think? Because if it's happening to me, and my father said that to me later, that he was at home and it was not a dream, and he was there for a minute, and then he woke up in the hospital. So it must be some connection, or I don't know, what do I call it. So let's move on to the next one, right? I was in art class when I was 15, and a random teacher's aide, lady in her 60s, unassuming Nana type, sat down next to me and said that she had a vision about my job as an adult. I was like, "Oh, am I a photographer?" She said, "No." I was fairly, dismissive and skeptical because I was certain that's what I would be doing. But I said, "Oh, yes, so tell me what you saw." She then went on to describe my job. None of it made much sense at the time, and you could tell she didn't quite understand what she saw. She said she couldn't figure out where I was because the place had no windows and everything was a pastel green color. She said I was making something that looked like CD covers, but they weren't that. She weren't she went to explain She went on to explain that I was working with a bunch of guys and some of them were helping teaching me to do my job. But the thing that really stuck out was she kept seeing me do this thing where I looked at whatever it was I was making, and that I would change the angle of it. She mimicked what I was doing. Anyway, about 8 years later, I ended up doing exactly all the things that she said I was doing. I was a wine label flexographic printer. It got me so bad that my future was set in stone that I eventually quit my job to pursue a fine art photography career. That was a few years back now, and I am about to have my second solo exhibition opening this weekend. What I still haven't figured out yet was, have I broken the timeline, or was I just meant to have had my future told and pursue a different career? It's all pretty out there, and I'm not too sure what to make of it because I'm not the type of person to believe in that sort of stuff. But like it happened, so there are people that can see into the future, and they are 100% right. Yeah, there are people who can see the future, who can, like, not 100%, but they can predict it. But I think you should not, go for any this kind of stuff, because it's not nice. It's not good for you. Like, your mind just got stuck into that kind of situation that you are going to become this, then you want to be different, and just be with the flow and let life surprise you. My family's old house backed onto a pretty substantial forested ravine. Raven? How do I pronounce it? My family's old house backed onto a pretty substantial forested ravine. I slept on the ground level floor, and my room was at the back of the house. On 4 separate occasions over the span of 5 years, I saw a middle-aged man dressed in a flannel shirt, blue jeans, and a red hat walk through my room with a dog leash in his hand. He would briefly stop at the moment. He would briefly stop at the same stop. He would briefly stop at the same spot every time and look around, then keep walking towards the ravine. I should note that this was fairly new construction in a suburb of a small city. and all that had been there previously was forest. I think he lost his dog in a ravine at some point, and he was there trying to find it. Let's let's move on to the next one. One weekend, I was at my dad's house. He'd come to the upstairs bathroom to get a shave and heard footsteps in my stepsister's room. I thought it was him walking around initially, so I got up to find him standing at her closed door. He looks back at me and whispers, "You can hear that too, right?" I nodded, and he opened the door slowly. My stepsister was asleep and never had been awake apparently. There was no way she could have crossed the room, gotten in bed, and pretended to be dead convincingly asleep in 2 seconds. It took my dad to open the door. He went in, checked her TV, which had never been on. She had one of those big ones from the 90s that would get warm when turned on. The radio hadn't been on either. Figured maybe it was a beat of a song or something. After that, we heard the footsteps bunch of time, usually very early in the morning. Some of the footsteps were so heavy they would shake the ceiling fan of the dining room directly under her bedroom, and they would woken her up for a few times as well. Whenever I would shower at my dad's, I always felt like someone was standing behind me. Eventually, I got so stressed and paranoid that I refused to shower at the house or even go into the upstairs bathroom. My dad asked me one day, do you ever feel like someone's in the shower with you when you are here?" After months of me feeling that way and never mentioning it to anyone. At least it was not hurting you. Because I have heard stories like that, and they hurt, and they're not the good type of spirits or whatever you call it in your religion. At mom's old apartment, I used to have this feeling. I was always being watched. Then I was starting to wake up at 3 a.m. consistently. One of those nights I had woken up, I heard someone call out my name. It was a woman's voice, but I didn't recognize it. She kept calling out my name, but walking towards the bed, getting closer, but I didn't see anything. So I freaked out, jumped off my bed, and ran into the brother's room. I hopped into bed with him and tried waking him up. The punk sleeps like that. He still sleeps like that. I heard her footsteps follow me until his doorway. After that, every time I woke up in the middle of the night, I just into his room and slept on the top of the bunk. We had bunk beds. My mother still doesn't believe that happened. Thankfully, we only lived there for a couple of months, then we moved out. That's terrifying. A similar thing happening to me. A similar thing happened to me when I was a teenager. I began waking. I began. It's a follow-up thread. So, a similar thing happened to me when I was a teenager. I began waking up every night around 3 a.m., feeling like something was about to hurt me. It was just this awful knotted thread sitting in my stomach. My dog would often also wake up, hackles raised. There was a bathroom attached to my bedroom that I believe was the source of it. It had the worst energy. I always refused to use it, no matter how many times we changed the bulb or tried to fix it. The wiring. The lights always flickered this ugly green color. The shower in it had a sliding door. Sometimes when I would awaken at night, I would hear the door rattling in its frame hard. The AC had not kicked in and the fan was not on. It only ever happened around 3 a.m. I would lie awake, staring at the bathroom door, waiting for it to slide open. Fortunately for my sanity, it never did. The shower door rattled alone in the dark bathroom, slamming against the sides of its track, but the bathroom door itself stayed shut. I once had a friend sleep over and he bolted awake around the same time, 3 a.m. Whilst I was walking around on my computer, he turned to me and told me he had felt suddenly very afraid. I know he was not feeling comfortable and that he wasn't sure what had woken him up. I hadn't told him a thing about what I have been experiencing because I would have scared him up. So just before moving out, I went in to clean the bathroom just to prep for the sale of the house. I heard a slight hum, like a woman singing. Nobody else was home and no radio or television was on. I stopped to listen as it was very quiet and very brief and heard it again, directly in my left ear. Okay, loud and clear. I bolted outside and did not come back until everyone was home. My mother would not let me talk to her about it. She would be very angrily shut me down whenever I tried to bring it up, loudly shushing me and saying she did not want to hear it. I think she was afraid of something. My brothers later admitted they had tried to have a ghost hunt in what they felt to be my haunted bathroom while I was away at soccer practice one afternoon. Even they were wary of it. I'm still not sure if I was just crazy or not, as nothing outrageous ever happened. I just remember the constant fear. The fear of unknown, I guess. Attended a, attended a school back in 2013 or 2014 that was so haunted I still don't believe it. Me and my other students, but also some of the teachers working there, saw things go flying in the air, heard footsteps, were sometimes touched by someone or something we couldn't see, and had various and expensive equipment. Myself, I had an iPhone 5 and a fully spec late 2012 iMac at the time. Fail whenever the ghost entered the room we were in, and so on. The various tech problems all disappeared as soon as I left the school and took my stuff back home with me. By the way, the iMac is still in use today by my uncle. He experiences no issues with it to this date. So to my first serious experience at the school, one night I was alone with a girl at my student house. Everyone else was partying down at their school building when suddenly we started hearing footsteps from the attic upstairs. It was a tiny room up there that was only big enough for storing some tour and hiking equipment, like a few backpacks and such. After maybe half a minute or so, the footsteps started coming down the stairs from the attic. At this point, me and my friend went dead silent, and we were both just staring toward the door that went to the attic. The footsteps came all the way down and went into the living room where we were sitting. At this point, the sound of the footsteps switched from sounding like someone walking around in the big boots into what to me sounded more like someone coming wet and barefoot out of the shower tub. When the sound got to the middle of the room, which was right in front of where me and this girl were sitting, it stopped, and for a brief moment there was nothing but dead pin drop silence. The girl and I just looked at each other for like 5 to 10 seconds before my eyes got something going behind the girl's back. We were sitting in the couch together, and behind her were these huge windows that went from the floor that went up from the floor and all the way up to the ceiling. They had some serious huge blinds as well. And so I watched this pretty heavy lid thing that certain industrial blinds have be lifted all the way up from the floor to just above the middle of the window. There, it kept floating in the air for 5 seconds before it was punched into the window with such force that I'm sure the window would have been broken if it hadn't been for those thick blinds protecting it. The girl didn't see this as it happened behind her back, but you can be sure that she heard the noise, and in fact, she got so scared that she literally jumped into my lap, screaming. That's the moment when I stopped, trying to give possible explanations, natural explanations to everything paranormal. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. It's the last story, and then we'll wrap it up. I was living in an apartment with three roommates at the time. I was 19 and working all sorts of weird hours. As usual, I would stay up late most nights. Our apartments had two hallways that formed a capital L. My room is at the top of the L. The bathroom was in the corner of where the lines meet, where with the door being in this inside middle of the small section. In the outside corner was the living room. My roommate had this bedroom at the end of the little part of the L. I walked out of my room to go to the bathroom. No need to turn the lights on as this was a track I had made hundreds of times before. As I left, the bathroom, I got turned to go back to my room just as I turned off the lights of the bathroom there standing where the short hallway and the living room met. There was a teenage girl standing there, wearing a white flowery dress, just smiling. She did not look evil, just a normal person standing there smiling at me. I freaked the fuck out and went running for my room. About 20 minutes later, I finally came out of my room, turning all the lights on. As I went through the apartment, she was nowhere to be seen. However, where I saw her standing was noticeably colder than the rest of the apartment. Should have been August. Noticeably colder than the rest of the apartment should have been for an August evening. Creepy, but not the worst part. I lived there about another year and I never saw her again. After I had moved out, I was hanging out with one of my roommate who had the bedroom at the end right next to my bathroom. Creepy, but not the worst part. I lived there for about another year and I never saw her again. After I had moved out, I was hanging out with my one roommate who had their bedroom at the end of the small hallway right next to the bathroom. We were talking and told him I never felt comfortable in the apartment after something happened, to which he responded, "Oh, you saw her too?" I nearly drove off the road when I heard this. We then both described her, finishing off each other's sentences describing her. He had seen her twice. I was indifferent about ghosts before that. Now I believe in them, or believe in something. It was very creepy, and every time I tell the story, the hairs stands up on my arm. I think she's giving you a friendly visit. Maybe she lived there, and she's a nice spirit, or jinn, or anything you can call it. It was really good. So these are really creepy and or nice stories that we have just read. So please send me your paranormal stories, your paranormal events that happened to you or with your family or friends or something creepy that you could not explain. So maybe we can dissect it, and you can email me down the there's an email down there, so you can send me an email so we can dissect what is going on. I'm not an expert, but maybe the third opinion is nice to have, right? So let's see you on the next one. Till then, take care.